ride on the cushions.
That was really good.
Yeah.
I'll go up there instead.
One way we could do it probably is just to take a row of chairs in closer on the side. Back in the olden days at Center on Monroe Street, a group this size would feel like a cozy little crowd. If we had 25, it was pretty much a full house. Yeah. So what's on your mind? You have a question? All right. You have a question? We have a microphone.
Well, what I'm aware of for myself is I am in a very difficult state. And so the question of the faults of samsara just seems so relevant. But I'm also feeling like that's a really nice escape.
How do you mean?
I suppose it's because things are so bad. That's an easy way to then think about it.
Do you mean it's kind of like it's too easy just to kind of write it off? Oh, it's just samsara, like that? Or how do you mean?
No, I think it's... Well, I guess I'm just wondering if I'm just fooling myself in terms of doing that. Like, I mean, yeah, I guess that's what I'm wondering. Is it just because it's it's the concept of it, I suppose. I can go, okay. And then if everything around me is not doing, if I'm not doing well, then it seems like that's an easy place then to go. The unsatisfactoriness of samsara. But that's just how it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I don't think you're necessarily fooling yourself. I think for me, the question that arises based on what you've shared is the question of what creates some kind of opening to make things workable in some way. And one of the ways that the contemplation of samsara does create that is along the lines to be just kind of too general about it. Well, what was I expecting? I was expecting everything to work out so well, but if I really look carefully, that's a rare and fleeting circumstance, generally speaking. So then, I can relax a little bit. It's not like I'm just kind of bad at making everything work. I just lack skill. Everybody else, it's working out perfectly for everybody else, and I'm the one that got left behind the door when they passed out. How to make samsara work for you? So I think that it can be helpful a little bit to kind of give a little space there. So that I don't think it's cheating somehow.
No, that's helpful in terms of you just reminding me what it's all about. The
Mm.
larger picture.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
This is sort of a boring question, but how do you help not let your legs go numb when you're sitting?
I can't imagine that's actually boring when that's what's going on for you. It was never boring for me. That's highly individual. Meditation posture is actually a very, very individual thing. I didn't naturally just plunk down and sit without pain. It took quite a while. There are different kinds of things that you can do, since basically, I mean, you could say sitting is a sport. So, it's an athletic event, you could say, just to make it a little lighthearted about it. So there are ways that you can train for it.
Endurance.
Yeah, there are ways that you can train, but it's a matter of mainly a matter of gradual building up or increasing flexibility for in the legs. But it took a long time for mine. I had to sit with cushions like that, just like that. That was when and have support from my knees. Otherwise, my knees hurt. I didn't feel something here, but eventually, that's not the issue anymore. All kinds of things. Being able to kind of sit in a kind of upright and balanced way. Most of the time when we sit, we're sitting some other way besides sitting up. All those good things that we do. We have the cultural hunch. And so just sitting up, the physical dimension of being on retreat can actually be, that's a piece to treat with some respect. So what in particular? Do you just flexibility in your knees, or what?
I guess so. I figured that time has something to do with it. I also just was like, if I sit, I can't remember what this is called specifically in yoga, but I tend to like to sit like this, and but below my knees they just go totally fuzzy numb, and pins and needles after like 20-30 minutes. And I did do like a half lotus position for a while, but then my knee just started killing me really bad. So, and that I was very comfortable sitting that way too, but then all of a sudden something in my knee started going bad, and I was just like, okay.
These are the kinds of things that that it's best to talk to somebody who actually really does work with a number of people's bodies, like a yoga teacher who actually sees a range of people. I hesitate to give advice because I've really only worked with one. And so the what's worked for me, I could get really enthusiastic and evangelical about it and probably destroy half a dozen people's knees before I was done with it.
Right. Yeah, I talked to my friend who is a yoga instructor, and she was just like, just, do some stretching before you sit. And I was like, okay. And then I just don't stretch. So it's probably something I could probably do a little differently.
You have to be kind of consistent about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think sitting with support under the knees was important for me. Sitting high enough so that I wasn't sitting like that in the back. That was important. But a lot of it was just getting used to it and trying to deal with my posture when I wasn't sitting or wasn't meditating. That was important.
Cool. Thank you.
Gradual. But it does make a difference if you can find whether it's in a chair or lying down or whatever it is. If you can find something that actually works, provides a kind of a place of stability, so that you can kind of relax into it and not be constantly fighting with something. That's actually it's a good support. It's nice. It's nice if you can get it, and it's good to be gently and slowly creative about finding out what actually works. Allowing the body to come to rest is, that actually, it's very supporting for allowing the mind to settle out as well. There are classic stories of yogis in the forest in India, and this one group of Buddhist yogis would sit, and due to their the deep mental absorptions and their bodhicitta, the radiance of their bodhicitta, the monkeys would come and make offerings of bananas to them. And then there was another group of non-Buddhist yogis who thought that looked like that would be pretty cool. So they did whatever they did. Monkeys didn't, it's like, and then they thought, okay, well maybe if we sit like the Buddhists. So they adopted it, and they sat like that, and then the monkeys started to come, and they kept. So that was the reinforcement thing. But by virtue of settling in that posture, the realization also started to deepen. So they, I don't know. This is just a story I heard. What's that? And I have that one I heard probably back in the 80s. So I heard that, and I think from the same Lama that said, I've never heard of anybody getting enlightened just by sitting up straight. So, but it is a support.
Well, I have a question kind of along those lines, or related. So movement, when I'm sitting, it's like if I get sleepy and start to get dull, but if I straighten up to wake up, but is that, but then I'm moving rather than just experiencing where I'm at. So does that make, I don't, I've just come across that conundrum, and you're supposed to sit and relax and not move, but then I fall asleep. So
There are a couple of ways to approach this, but the most important principle is to abandon the notion that there's this one right way to do it. Okay. Let go of that, because you'll find lots of texts will refer to different things to do when you're either agitated or sleepy. You'll get little recipes for things like raise your gaze. Oh, you're moving. You moved. You moved your eyes. I saw you. You know, we've busted you for for moving. No, you have to be practical about it. That said, the other side of it would be, oh, well, you could actually take the entire gestalt of dullness. You could bring vibrant, precise awareness to that dullness itself.
I keep trying that. It doesn't work. Hasn't worked yet.
Okay, then sit up straight. Splash a little cold water. There are all kinds of things, and they clearly presume that you're sitting entirely by yourself in some mountain terrain where you can shout "pet" very loudly and not have everybody in the meditation hall have a heart attack. So there are all kinds of things. Yeah, splash water, cold water in your face. Yeah, Eric said he would dump cold water on himself during retreat. Kala Rinpoche was reported during, there are two stories. One is that he would sit on a window ledge that was, too far down to just fall down and ride it off. He would do that. And he would also sit so that when the retreat master opened the door in the morning to wake people up, if he was there, the door would knock him over, basically. So if he wasn't already up, he would get rudely awakened. So there are all kinds of kind of fanatical things that people have done. But if you sort of take it seriously, that, oh, actually liberation is possible, and it's actually worth putting more energy into it and using more of my time and not drifting off, then these things kind of make a little sense. But we shouldn't adopt them out of some kind of sense of moral inferiority. That's not the right way to go about it. It has to come out of that sense of kind of an inspired sense of enthusiasm. Then, otherwise, it's just adding fuel to our own suffering.
Well, I have another question that came up today. Lama Michael Spin's stressing, gift from our guru. Mm-hmm. So things that are hard for us are more likely to wake us up. But then there's this other teaching. It seems like a contradiction, but I'm sure it's probably not, and I'd like to get some explanation, that rather than doing dharma or practice to make your life better, you change your life to make your dharma practice better, mm-hmm. which to me, that's, do less, have a calmer place, make it more. But that's like calming. That's getting away from that chaos about the hard stuff.
Well, he also said this morning, he said, also all the good stuff too is the gift from your guru.
True.
So I was listening. I was trimming my jasmine, but I had the streaming on my phone in my pocket listening to, and I stopped to listen when he was giving teachings.
Oh.
So he did say, I remember he did say that part too.
Yeah.
And in a certain way, it's real obvious that we generally don't want to deal with hard things. That's pretty obvious. But what's less obvious is that we don't want to actually investigate kind of really pleasant things either. Because we don't want to why would you rock the boat? I just want more of this. I don't really want to investigate this pleasant experience. I just want more of it. It's just like, don't bother me, I'm having a good time now. But from the point of view of that all experience is the gift of the guru, then that's also something to look into. All experience is something to look into. Pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. But the notion of unpleasant things being the gift from the guru, that's a little bit of a kind of a slap. Like, no, don't just try and get rid of this. Don't try and get rid of it, because this is important. This is something you can get something out of if you really look into it. Yeah. No, it's. I think he said later on in the Q&A, so like he'd never felt like he had to go looking for bad stuff. To plenty stuff came along. So if you extend your question, the premise of your question a little bit about the contradiction, it would seem almost like, well, actually, all we should be doing is trying to create chaos and difficulty and unpleasant circumstances in our lives, because that way we would have more gifts from the guru. And that's not generally the way Dharma is practiced. If you look at it from the point of view of the three turnings, in the first turning, where you're renunciation of the causes of suffering is kind of a big deal. You do that in order to stop creating bad circumstances for yourself and for others. It's really clear. So you're actually trying to clean up your act, create better circumstances. And as it goes on, you get all the way out to the third turning, and you read about, if you read the life of Tongtrong Gyalpo, there's, what is it, it's either deliberate behavior or deliberate activity. And by the time you have actually kind of some serious realization has started to dawn in your experience, then you actually do go out. Kind of literally, in some cases, the advice would be from the guru is now go down into town. You've been up here, this is time to check things out. Go down into town and start insulting. Go insult the biggest, grumpiest looking guy in town, and just keep at it until he beats you up. Well, this is obviously not for beginners, and it's not at all in accord with the first turning. But those kinds of things were. You read about crazy yogis, and they do things like this, and it's deliberate. but it's not at all. That's not our practice. We're kind of really looking out for not creating the causes of suffering. This is really front and center, and that should also create positive circumstances. So no. Sometimes these contradictions are a matter of, well, where along the continuum of realization are we? What are we actually working on at the moment? William.
Okay, so for some time I'm going to just use the vocabulary and language that I know from looking and listening to a lot of Theravada stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So on the Brahma Viharas, there's the third one, joy, is like sometimes gets my attention. So in Theravada, they call it altruistic joy. And so it's like, it seems to be a joy that of other person's successes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so like I modify, right? Because I think there's like a lot to be, like joy is like worthwhile in my own practice. And I was just wondering, like in this lineage, how does that work? Like joy, for just like independent joy, not necessarily associated with anybody, but just like a feeling.
Feeling of joy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's helpful sometimes.
Yeah.
It seems wholesome sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's really, the wholesomeness of it is like a little tricky also, because it encourages unwholesome stuff.
Yeah.
So
in one of the translations that you'll find for the, we would say generally the four immeasurables, four Brahma Viharas, same sequence. Often you'll find sympathetic joy.
Yeah.
Which has the same kind of connotation.
Yes.
That's in resonance. It's for me, I found it helpful to think about compassion and sympathetic joy kind of as these two dimensions of relating, based in kind of the frame of equanimity, and based on kind of loving kindness, sort of this pervading sense of holding all beings in that field, then in meeting beings where they're creating the causes of suffering and experiencing the causes of suffering, then you could say that naturally that radiant loving kindness manifests as compassion in kind of in an active engagement, and where the causes of virtuous activity and the causes of freedom from suffering are arising, and the fruits of that are arising, then that sympathetic joy or the rejoicing in the merit of others. Those are very classic teachings on that. There's also just the sense of joy in one's own practice.
Yeah, and that's what I was hoping you would talk about a little bit more too.
So what's your question in there? What's active for you in that?
Well, really, I just would like to hear another human being talk about it, because, like it's been part of my practice, but I've never, it's kind of like, am I doing it right, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. So what yardstick would you use for figuring out if you're doing it right or not?
Well, the yardstick I would use is does it feel like it's leading toward like in a word, happiness. there's kind of an intuitive feeling like whether this is like, I mean, I don't want to say enlightenment, but let's just say, this guiding star called enlightenment. If it leads toward that, then that's good.
Mm-hmm. And if it leads towards
suffering,
what? Suffering, it's not so good.
Right.
And so what?
So that's good. If it leads toward the cessation of suffering, then that's great. And if it leads toward suffering, then that's not so good.
And so within that, then the extent to which the sense of does it lead more towards a sense of connection with others, or more towards that sense of kind of sort of sinking into my own enjoyment? And so that would be one thing. So that's where the bodhicitta principle is quite a thing. Is it leading me towards not just the cessation of suffering, but is it leading me towards more connection with others? Does it actually bring about a circumstance where I can connect and have more of a positive benefit, more positive impact in circumstances? Then you can see, it's good. It's good.
Yeah, thank you. That was helpful.
And then it's also just within one's own practice. Then it's like there's also a degree of inspiration to go in and do the things that open things up more. So
that was very helpful. It was kind of like a brainstorm, and thank you.
Sure, yeah.
I feel like this question is related to the one I just asked. And so this in the recitation and everywhere in Mahayana, there's like benefit for all beings, and it's also kind of a ludicrous goal, because not from an internal point of view, but from an external point of view. Like if somebody wanted to change my life, I would say, please don't. In general.
Yeah.
Like unless I knew them as like a highly evolved teacher or something.
Yeah. Well, of course. Yeah.
But the internal, all the beings in the entire universe that are part of my, internalized mind structure, right? Like every being that I can conceive of,
mm-hmm.
and the phenomenon of having a conception of beings, that I can totally deal with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I wish them all well, absolutely. And I'll do whatever I can for their benefit. But the external, like people out there or whatever, aliens, whatever, I balk at that part.
Why?
Because it seems impossible.
Over what time frame?
Like in this moment, over this time frame.
Okay, well, throw that one out the window, because we're if we take the frame of reference of that we'll keep at this round of birth and death, countless lives. So you throw out the frame of reference of I have to get it done by noon.
or this instant. Yeah.
or this instant.
Yeah.
Um,
Like there's a lot of things that happen that are totally valid in an instant. You know, like mindfulness. Like
Mhm.
mindfulness has like a huge benefit, like instantly.
mhm.
So that's kind of, you know, in my practice, that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah. Well, aspirations are a different kind of. They're a different stew than the kind of the instantaneous, that piece. Aspirations. While it's true that every enlightenment is accessed. We'll just take out when, but it is accessed through the moment. So mindfulness does lead us to the place of being able to see into and recognize Buddha nature. It will be in the moment sometime. It's not going to be the past or the future. It will be in that. So from that point of view, that sense of the instantaneousness of the benefit, that's a reasonable intuition about something. It's in that. But because we haven't recognized it, and because other beings haven't recognized it, then the role of aspiration comes in, so that we set in place the conditions where that's more likely. And so that's a broader endeavor, and a lot of what it is you could say there are two sides to it. There's a lot in both sides, but in the one side, just in beginning to really take seriously the infinite connectedness of being. And the more we take that seriously, the more we recognize that's actually the situation. The more we see that this is a dynamic situation in play, then what seeds do we plant in that? And from that perspective, the aspiration to liberate all beings, it's planted in that frame of reference, not in the frame of reference of instantaneously, I'll get it, then they'll all get it, and we'll all be done. That's a different thing. The piece, the other place, so that in terms of that cultivating that deeper sense of the reality of connectedness, that's kind of one whole dimension there, and all of our ethical guidance that comes in the Dharma, all the cultivations of loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta, the sympathetic joy, all these things are part of that active piece, and that has this very incredibly big frame of reference. What we need to do on our own side to actually be of deeper and deeper benefit, so that we can actually bring these aspirations to fruition, does happen by becoming clearer and clearer about the nature of our experience and the nature of our minds. And so that, on that side, then we make aspirations that we actually realize that. And for that part, there's a huge amount of kind of bailing out all kinds of assumptions and mental habit patterns that obscure that. So there's aspirations to be made on that side. So the Mahamudra aspiration prayer, you were here this afternoon. Yeah. So the Mahamudra aspiration prayer is kind of, it leans more in the aspirations for awakening, the Mahamudra, the ultimate bodhicitta side, the ultimate side. And those are aspirations that lean in that direction. There are other aspiration prayers that you can see that lean totally in the other side, in terms of like the 8 thoughts of a great being, which really emphasizes cultivating profound bodhicitta in connection with other beings. So they're two kinds of things, but there's not really a fundamental contradiction between this view of kind of this vast view of time and dynamics of that, and what we need to do in terms of being able to penetrate, you could say, the nature of the moment. Just to kind of invent more terms to just make things more obscure some other times. Well, but Bill the other day said the nature of the moment, but you're all talking about the nature of mind. So I'll freely confess that I've just confused matters, but I think in the moment, it seems like it's kind of useful given the way you were framing your question.
Yeah, thank you. I tracked all that. Yeah.
Are we there yet? I think we're there. Just pop it. Yes. That's there.
Shall I ring the bell?
Sure. It was time to ring the bell anyway. There.
By this virtue may I quickly realize Mahamudra and establish all beings without exception in this state.
Thank you all. Which retreat are you